Basic anatomy and physiology, the muscles. Girls, have you ever imagined of a masculine guy proposing to you, waiting for your yeses? And boys, have you ever imagined of having those perfect abs and big biceps? Stay tuned and keep watching this video. Hi everyone, it's boy Lil Z and welcome to another video about basic anatomy and physiology. But before anything else, if this is the first time you're watching my video, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to be updated for my upcoming videos. Also give a like, comment, and share this video to everyone at home. Also, suggestions, comments, critiques, and donations are highly encouraged for the improvement of this channel. And lastly, before we proceed, if you want to know more about me, follow me on my social media accounts flashed on your screen. Links will be provided on the description box below. And in today's video, I will be sharing with you 5 main points about the muscles. I will also be giving you trivias and also a review outline at the end portion of this video. So stay tuned and I hope you'll learn a lot from this video. Number 1. What is a muscle? Wait, let me explain. Muscles are a type of elastic tissue that allows movement and that are connected to a bone, thanks to the structure called tendons. A medical abbreviation of a muscle is MS. And a muscle has 2 main functions. To easily remember these 2 main functions, just remember the medical abbreviation MS. M for mobility and S for stability. You see, when people hear about muscles, they may be thinking about Chris Evans in the Captain America. But did you really know what muscles are made of? And did you know that there are around more than 600 muscles in a body? Now you know. Number 2. Types of muscle tissues. Here we have 3 types of muscle tissues. First is a smooth muscle tissue. Smooth muscle tissue is found in the walls of hollow organs throughout the body. It is involuntary and elastic and is controlled by the autonomic nervous system. To easily remember the meaning and the function of a smooth muscle tissue, just remember that it is for bowel movements. Bowel, vowel. A, E, I, O, and U. A because it is controlled by autonomic nervous system. E because it is elastic. I because it's involuntary. O and U because it is found in your organs under your brain. The second type of muscle tissue is the cardiac muscle tissue. Cardiac muscle tissue is found solely in your heart wall and is responsible for the pumping of the heart. However, cardiac muscles work together with your cardiac conduction system. Number 3 is your skeletal muscle tissues. There are around 640 skeletal muscles in your body, and each skeletal muscle is a group of fibers that comes from a string-like structure called myofibril. The myofibril which will then combine into a group and will be called as muscle fibers. Muscle fibers has its own nuclei and cellular membrane called the sarcolemma. These muscle fibers will be grouped and will be called as fascicles. And group of fascicles is now what we call as the muscles. For example, your biceps brachii. In a skeletal muscle, we have 3 main parts. To easily remember these 3 main parts, just remember the word boy. B for belly. Belly is the part of the muscle where the muscle bulk is found. O for origin. Origin is an attachment to the bone when there is no movement. And I, insertion, which is a part or an attachment to the bone where there is movement. You see, a skeletal muscle is sturdy because of the myofibrils. But not just the myofibrils, but also because of the sheath covering called the epimysium, perimysium, and endomysium. These muscle coverings function together to prevent the muscle from bursting out. Now, if you want to know the story behind how a muscle contracts, here it is. Number 4. Action potential. Before going directly to the story of action potential of how muscle contracts, first we need to know the rules and what are needed for the muscle to contract. All things that are needed in an action potential are proteins, enzymes, and receptors. And there are two rules in an action potential. First rule, proteins like to change shape when stuff binds to them. And second, changing shapes can allow proteins to bind or unbind with other stuff. Now, remember those tiny string-like structure called myofibril? In a skeletal muscle, these myofibrils are divided lengthwise into groups or areas called sarcomere. A sarcomere contains two even strands of protein, two kinds of myofilaments called the actin and myosin. The story of action potential is also called as the story of actin and myosin. Just like the love story of Romeo and Juliet, where even in the most romantic love, there is always stumbling block in your way. Now, remember, the actin is also called as the thin myofilaments, and the myosin is also called as the thick myofilament. And each divided area, or what we call as sarcomere, is separated by a Z line. Z line serves as borders between two sarcomeres with a zigzag pattern, which is found in the both end of sarcomere. A muscle contracting means that two Z lines are going closer to each other. Now here comes the story of actin and myosin. You see, by location, your actin and myosin actually do not touch each other. In fact, your actin are guarded by two proteins called the troponin and the tropomyosin. These two protein guards, your troponin and tropomyosin, works together to prevent your myosin from getting in touch to your actin. But luckily, these protein guards can be distracted by a little ATP and more calcium. You see, your ATP is a form of chemical energy, and your muscle is all about converting chemical energy into motion. So muscles are always hungry for ATP. Take note that your ATP is found and is produced by your mitochondria, and there are lots of mitochondria found in a specialized area, or what we call as the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So let's say I want to move my arm. My brain will send motor signal along the motor neuron until it synapses with the muscle cell of my arm. The receptor of those cells are ligand-gated sodium channels, so when the signal is sent, it causes the release of acetylcholine into the synapse. The channels open up, creating a rush of sodium into the cell as a graded potential, which if it is strong enough, it will cause nearby voltage-gated sodium channels to open. So the action potential zips along a muscle cell's membrane, the sarcolemma, which has lots of tubes that run deep inside the cell called T-tubules. When the action potential travels down one of those tubes, it eventually triggers the voltage-sensitive proteins that are linked to those calcium channels on the cell's sarcoplasmic reticulum. When the calcium channels are open, the calcium stored inside rushed into the rest of the cell. And finally, the myosin will say, "This is it." When the calcium rushes into the sarcomere, this is where the protein guards get irreversible destruction, and the actin will now be free and the myosin can finally bind with it. You see, troponin loves to bind with calcium. And when this happens, remember the rule number 1, protein like to change shape when stuff binds to them. So when troponin binds with the calcium, it pulls the tropomyosin up, and the myosin now can bind with the actin. However, in order for the myosin to touch and bind with the actin, it needs some ATP that has been break down into ADP and phosphate. Now when the ADP and phosphate is binded into the myosin will now move into an extended position, getting ready to touch with the actin. So when the protein guards get irreversible destruction, this is where the myosin will now move into a flex position and now touch the actin. You see, the binding of actin and myosin causes the sarcomere to shorten, and that's when our muscle contract. Now, after contraction, the ADP and phosphate unbind with the myosin because of the rule number 2. Changing shapes can allow the protein to bind or unbind with other stuff. The unbinding of ADP and phosphate from the myosin will now cause it to release a new ATP that will again bind to the myosin. This binding will cause a change in shape, leading to the separation of the myosin from the actin. When this happens, the myosin will again change the ATP into ADP and phosphate and again move to an extended position yet again. Then the calcium pumps will grab those calcium attached to your troponin and tropomyosin, or what we call as the protein guards, leading to the tropomyosin and troponin going back to its original place. This is what we call as relaxing part of a muscle contraction. You see, this process of action potential goes over and over to my body as I am talking to you. And number 5, types of muscle contraction. There are 2 major types of muscle contraction, isometric and isotonic. The isometric is a muscular contraction where your muscle length do not change at all. It has 2 subtypes. First, the yielding. It is where a muscle contraction is opposed by resistance. For example, holding a barbell without raising it or lowering it. Second is the overcoming. It is when the contraction is opposed by an immovable object, just like when you are pushing against a wall. The second major type of muscle contraction is what we call as isotonic. Isotonic is the opposite of isometric, where the muscle length changes when there is contraction. It also has 2 subtypes. The concentric, it is where there is shortening of a muscle, such as doing bicep curls. And the second subtype is the eccentric contraction, when there is lengthening of the muscle, like straightening your elbow after doing a bicep curl. Take note, in every movement, your concentric contraction and your eccentric contraction are always working together to promote muscle balance and prevent injuries. That's it. Today we've learned a lot about muscles, from the anatomy, physiology, and also some kinesiology of a muscle. I hope you've learned a lot from this video, and see you soon on the more advanced topic about anatomy and physiology. Again, if this is the first time you're watching my video, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to support my channel. Also, give a like, comment, and share this video to everyone at home. So God bless you all. See you soon on my upcoming videos. This is boy Lil Z. Peace out.
Run.